2 years ago, I realized I had not read much from outside of the United States. So I set out on a journey to read one book from every country. It's taking me a while because I'm not doing it in succession. But today we're talking about some of our favorite books from Latin America, which I am woefully underread on. I was debating whether to start with Asia for this episode, where I feel like
I'm very underread on.
The opposite. So yeah. I figured.
Well, thank you for picking something that I have read more of.
So we're going to be talking about some great Latin American literature today, and the bonus content for our Patreon members at the end of this episode will be the Atlantic article about elite college students who don't know how to read books. And I'm throwing this on you now, I also want to discuss Hong Kong and her refusal to celebrate the winning of the Nobel Prize.
Oh, I didn't hear about that.
Yes, we'll discuss that as well. So if you want to hear that extra bit of the discussion, you'll have to sign up over on Patreon. Link is down below. But let's talk about our weekly reading update. What do you got?
Pretty much the same
as last week.
Yeah, I actually haven't done a ton of reading this week. I've been adding some more jiu-jitsu to my schedule. So, when I get home from that, I'm just exhausted and kind of just want to plop on the couch in front of the TV.
Yeah.
And I've actually surprisingly done a good job of not starting anything else. So I've just been sticking to Against the Day and Lonesome Dove, which I fell a little bit behind on Lonesome Dove, which I know we talked about last week because I wanted to chip away at Against the Day. So I do need to get caught up on LD, but yeah, I've done a pretty good job muting out the squirrels in my brain, telling me to start 3 different books, and it's been difficult. There are a lot that I want to get reading. I talked about how The Invented Part is one of the books I'd like to read before the end of the year by Rodrigo Fresan. And someone I follow on Instagram shared a quote from his newest novel, or his most recent English, or most recently published in English, Melville.
Yep.
And that particular quote blew me away. So now and someone else had told me that.
Do you have a copy of it?
Yes.
Okay.
And someone told me reading The Invented Part is kind of a good way to get into his writing style and things like that. And some of the ideas that he plays or approaches in Melville will make a little bit more sense, be a little bit more clear.
Yeah.
So I still want to, would like to read both, but want to start with The Invented Part. So seeing that quote, it really started turning the gears and wanting to read The Invented Part. I'm just like shutting that out.
Yeah, you should get caught up on Lonesome Dove, because I think both of us in the first maybe 150 or so pages were feeling, yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
But not really like sucking me in or blowing me away. And I'm about 500 pages in now. I've got another 30 or 40 to go to be fully on track with our book club for the month. But yeah, it's good.
I do remember more than one someone.
A few people.
Both in the
I
in
know
the
what you're gonna
Patreon
say.
chat and in like the comments on YouTube, maybe on Instagram, said in the second half it really picks up.
It does.
So I am looking forward to like pushing through and getting caught up and reading more of it. Life's been getting in the way a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, so very similar for me, just sticking to the books that I've been reading. Both are quite long, Lonesome Dove and Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. I didn't do much from IJ this week because I also started, and I'm almost done, Human Act by Hong Kong. What?
I think you said act.
Oh, acts. Yeah, plural. As we mentioned at the top of the episode, she recently won the Nobel Prize for Literature. She's the first Asian woman to do so, as far as I know. And I've had this book on my shelf for a while. I'm planning on doing a really big collection on Patreon of content around Asian literature because I'm getting close to being able to do that for Vietnam, and then I figured I'll just kind of expand beyond that. And I thought, well, now's a good time to read this book because obviously it's kind of trending on social media, and it's a book I've wanted to read.
Yeah. I mean, I pretty much did the same thing with Septology last year.
Yeah.
I didn't start reading it right after he was announced the winner, but like it was pretty short. You know, him winning kind of spurred that. Transit Books was kind enough to send me a copy of Septology, and then I came down with COVID, and it was
Good timing.
Yeah, so I kind of hunkered down with that, and you know, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've got maybe 30 pages left of Human Act, and man, it is wild.
Yeah,
I think
wild.
I think you would like it. So, every chapter the perspective changes. So there's first, second, and third person, which is, you know, an interesting choice.
Yeah.
I think most books tend to stick with one.
Right.
And any books using second person are pretty few and far between.
Yeah. How did you vibe with that section or those sections? Where
there's more. There's a few of them. I think I'm kind of ambivalent about it. Like there's some, it's a little weird, but I don't hate it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that it really is going to depend on how the rest of the exposition is written.
Yeah.
Because sometimes in the second person chapters, there's not really enough of it for you to even really notice. And other times it is you is more common. So it can be a little bit like jarring, but I think that's kind of why she chose to use that.
It is a tough thing to do, to execute well. I only know of 2 other books. I'm sure there's plenty out there.
Yeah.
Jessica Anthony has a novel that the title of is escaping me, that I know that she wrote in the second person. I think it's something Aardvark. And then Troll by Dave Fitzgerald, which I talked about last year.
Yeah, which I have a copy of.
Is written entirely in the second person, and I think he pulled that off very well. I think in that novel, it would not be the same. The themes and the ideas he's getting at would not be the same and would not be as effective if it was in first or third. I think that the second person perspective in that novel really adds to it.
Yeah, it's I mean, from what you've told me about Troll, it's like meant to be kind of an immersive experience.
Yeah,
like really making you feel like you are the protagonist. So,
and I think
that works.
Yes,
well.
And one of the things with Troll, I mean, there is almost nothing admirable about the protagonist,
right?
And you know, he kind of falls into this like, you know, internet trap of well, he struggles with dating in modern society and things like that, and then you know, falls into this trap of like online misogyny and things like that. You know, one of the themes of the book is how easy it theoretically could be for any of us to become that person, to like, you know, have a bad date or have a bad experience and then go online and then fall down the rabbit hole and
put yourself in an echo chamber.
Yeah. And get sucked into the algorithm and then like, just have all these nasty ideas.
Yeah. It's an interesting stylistic choice. I'm definitely open to reading more of it. I do think it's actually, it works well for this book. This is just one of the strangest books I've ever read, honestly. It's about the Gwangju uprising in South Korea in 1980, I think, which I had zero idea about. So my knowledge, and I'm using that term liberally, about Korean history is probably above average for an American, but it's pretty weak for South Korea post the war.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot about, or I know about the pre-Japanese occupation. I know about the occupation. I know about the Korean War, the split between North and South. And then from that point on, it's all North Korea for me. So, pretty shocking stuff in this book. It's very brutal, very violent. It's not necessarily like a book, for me at least, that is totally like sucking me in and like it's a page turner. And I think part of that is because I'm reading Lonesome Dove simultaneously, which is so narratively different and really is like a book that is like addicting to read. And so this is just so opposite that. It's like, oh, I gotta like really focus on what I'm reading here.
Yeah, I hear you.
So
sometimes it's nice to have that contrast, and then other times it makes it really difficult.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, that's my reading update. So let's talk about the books from Latin America that we've read, what we want to read, our general thoughts. We're going to do this a little bit differently. So normally we'll each pick out 5. We're literally just going to go through country by country. I mean, quite a few of these, probably neither of us have read anything from. You haven't read something from every single?
No.
Okay.
God, no.
And let's do it. Let's do it alphabetically.
Okay.
So let's kick it off with Argentina.
So, okay. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
Why don't you go first?
Okay. So when I was making my list of out of the countries, I have read, actually, never mind. I was going to say I've read more Argentine authors than any other Latin American country, but now that I'm looking at my list, that is not true. So I've read...
I won't hold you to it.
At least to the best I could suss out looking at my shelves and my Goodreads account. I have read 3 Argentine authors. Borges. I don't have my copy of the collected fictions with me. That's been my lunch break book, so that's in my desk at work. But I have read, where is it? The Jewish Son by Daniel Guebel, translated by Jessica Sequeiro. It's from our friends at 7 Stories Press.
I didn't realize he was Argentinian.
Yes.
Cool.
Which I've talked about this book a couple times before on the pod.
Yeah.
I loved it. It's very short. You could easily read it in a day. It's just about kind of the relationship between a father and son. It's all told from the son's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
He's both reflecting on his childhood. Kind of had an abusive father, and then reflecting on that abusive father-son relationship while he's taking care of his ailing father now that he's an adult and his father has grown up and, is in his old age and needs a lot of assistance and caretaking.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's so heartfelt and heartbreaking and just a beautifully written novel.
Cool.
And then last one I have is this really cool looking cover. This is The 7 Madmen and the Flamethrowers by Roberto Arlt. This edition was published by Corona Samizdat. It's actually the 2 novels, The 7 Madmen and the Flamethrowers, were originally published separately, but it was intended to be one complete novel.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like the first collection of that compiled into one text, and it is translated by Naomi Lindstrom and Larry Riley.
Nice.
So, but this was just a really pretty unique one. I mean, the cover itself is super cool. That alone kind of drew me to it. But yeah, really fun novel.
Cool. I've read Fever Dream. You've read this as well, haven't you?
I have.
Chalk another one up for Andy. Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin. This is translated by Megan McDowell. And this one, I think we've both talked about this before. Pretty fun little book, or I don't know if fun's the right word, but engaging.
Yeah.
Title says it all. Reads like a fever dream. make some allusions to the ecological crisis in Argentina. I guess they're dealing with some pretty bad environmental issues, and those are related to maybe some corruption in the government and whatnot. Strangely, I mean, a lot of the books that I've read, or not, I haven't read a lot from Latin America, but a few of the books that I've read all kind of have a very similar style of being, I guess, esoteric, for lack of a better term, just not hitting you over the head, explaining things to you, just kind of more hinting at stuff and it feeling a little more feverish. So, but a cool book. Okay.
Anything else from Argentina you would like to read?
Yes, I actually would like to read the one from Chronosamizdat that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And I definitely need to get to some Borges for sure.
Let me read a quote from this because I don't know about you, but sometimes like if I read a book that is good but not great, like it doesn't like punch me and stick with me. You know, sometimes like you kind of, I don't say it feels like a waste, but you know how sometimes you feel like you read a book and it's just kind of like, that was okay, but like maybe I could have read something else.
Yeah.
Anytime I read a book like that or have a book like that where it's not this like gripping experience that I'm going to think about forever. Sometimes I like to think about it like if there's a quote or a passage that just like absolutely floors me or I think is really great or something small like that. Like I think that makes the reading experience worth it alone.
Yeah. I mean, I used to say that if I can read a book and get one thing out of it, it was worth it for me.
Yeah.
And that I would say like a really powerful quote does. Meets that benchmark.
Quick little section. So the protagonist is talking to this pimp character who goes by the Melancholy Ruffian.
Okay.
His real name is Hafner. Let's see. So, the Melancholy Ruffian had just loaned the protagonist some money. And let's see. A question popped out spontaneously. How come, if you already have a fortune, you keep pimping? Hafner turned on him, looking feisty, then said, look here, pimping isn't a game any fool can play, you know? So why should I leave 3 women at loose ends when they can bring in 2,000 pesos a month? Would you just let them go? No. So? And you don't love them? None of them especially appeals to you? As soon as it was out of his mouth, Erdosain saw what an asinine question he had asked. The pimp looked at him a second, then answered, now listen to this. If tomorrow some doctor came and told me that Basque woman of yours will be dead in a week on or off the job, then I'd let that woman, who's brought me in some 30,000 pesos over 4 years, work 6 days more and die the 7th.
Jesus. I guess it's true what they say. Pimpin' ain't easy.
Pimpin' ain't easy.
No, it sounds like a fun book for sure.
Yeah. There's actually, I don't know if it's on here. I don't know if the quote is, but there was like a little blurb I saw somewhere. It was from Roberto Bolaño. And I might be getting it wrong, but it was something like, Arlt is Jesus Christ.
Nice. To answer your question about other things I want to read from Argentina, obviously Borges, but I have a list. I'll put a link in the description of books from every country that I've kind of earmarked, and they're different categories. So nonfiction, fiction, classics, and then books about the country. And I've marked down for Argentina, Prisoner Without a Name, Cell Without a Number by Jacobo Timmerman. So I guess at some point I thought I wanted to read that, so maybe I will. Okay.
I've got 2 from Argentina that I would like to read. There's another one by Guebel.
You brought him with you.
I did. The Absolute. It seems like it's basically about like this family that's kind of secretly affecting major events in history.
Love that.
And then I have this one from our friends at Open Letter Books, Gesseldome by Guillermo Sacomano, translated by Andrea G. Labinger. Like True Detective through the lenses of William Faulkner and John Dos Passos. It seems like it's kind of about the seedy underbelly of a resort town in Argentina.
Love that.
And, this was one that when I was talking to Chad, asking if there were any books he recommended that I should pick up in their sale, he said I should check this one out. So
cool.
Nice thick Argentine novel.
Yeah. All right.
Sounds like a real page turner.
According to the internet, the next country alphabetically in Latin America is Belize.
Nothing.
I don't believe I've read anything from Belize. Have you?
Not.
Let's go to my list quickly and see what I've even earmarked from Belize. Apparently not much. Is this right? Hold on. Becca Lamb by Z. Edgel. No idea on that one. I made this list. And then a classic from that country is On Heroes, Lizards, and Passion by Zoila Ellis.
Interesting.
So I'll have to do some digging on those. I mean, it's the type of thing where I wanted to have a fairly comprehensive list for people to look at, but I didn't go out and just acquire every book that I put on the list because A, that'd be very expensive, but B, just like, things change. I might discover something else.
Right.
It is pretty slim pickings for a lot of countries.
Yeah, I remember you saying that when you started making your list.
Yeah, there's just not a lot of English translations, or the country has been so economically crippled by an imperial power that there's just nobody doing any writing there that is getting out, at least,
Right.
So, Bolivia. Anything from Bolivia?
No.
Okay, this is going to be a quick episode. Just kidding. Oh, what happened here? Come back.
Excuse me.
What do I have marked for Bolivia? So for a nonfiction, When Rains Became Floods by Lergio Galvan Sanchez. That sounds like a Bolivian name.
Yeah.
My first real weightlifting coach was Bolivian.
Nice.
He was very ashamed of it because Bolivia is not a weightlifting powerhouse like Colombia or some of the other South American countries, and he felt like it was like bad for his street cred. He was a very complicated person. He asked me to somebody asked if we could include more like jiu-jitsu and weightlifting stories and like try to tie them into books, which is pretty tough to do. But this one is, I can to this degree because we're talking about Bolivia. So he had a company where he made shoes, weightlifting shoes.
Yep.
And did you ever wear any of those, the Ristos?
So, but I know I think you've told me parts of this story.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't say this on the internet, but it's done. It's done now. But one of his shoe designs looked very similar to these 80s Adidas weightlifting shoes that were kind of iconic. And they have a very, very tight copyright on the 3 stripes. And so the shoes looked a lot like these Adidas. And so he got sued. And one day I'm in the gym and he's like, Tony, he's like, you're good with computers, right? And I'm like, I mean, I guess. And he's like, I need you to do something for me. And I was like, what? And he wanted me to like doctor his books to make it seem like he hadn't sold as many shoes as he had, because I guess part of the way these like lawsuits work is, basically however much money you made based on ripping off somebody else's copyright, then, that's how the compensation is determined. And I was like, I'm not doing that, dude. And that was when I really started to realize he was a little nuts. But okay, what else from Bolivia here? Affections by Rodrigo Fresan is what I have written down for my more modern fiction, and then Juan de la Rosa by Nathaniel Aguiar. That book I actually remember reading about and being like, yeah, I need to get a copy of that, and I couldn't find it. Okay, moving on to other Latin American countries alphabetically. Brazil.
I've read a bunch from Brazil.
Yep.
Mostly Clarice Lispector.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've read 8 of her books.
Okay. We don't need to get it too deep into that because we talk about it all the time.
Yeah. And then I've also read, is it Machado D.S.C.?
Mm-hmm. Brás Cubas.
Yes. Posthumous Memoirs of Brás Cubas. And then I've also read, I talked about it a little bit already when I was reading it, but I brought it with me today. The Taker and Other Stories by Ruben Fonseca, translated by Clifford E. Landers. And this is another one from our friends at Open Letter.
We're basically just a open letter propaganda pod. So shamefully, I've only read one book from Brazil. I don't have a copy of it because I didn't like it. And that was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Oh, I forgot that he was Brazilian. You can add that to my list too.
Yep. Shout out to our friend Becca. She gave me the gift. She gave me the book as a gift for my birthday, I believe, many years ago. She was maybe 18 at the time. So we're friends with her whole family, just to give that context. And she knew I liked books, gave me that book, and I read it as an adult, which we've talked about this book before and other books like it. I can see why it would be very impressionable for a young person.
Yeah, I remember when I read it. I've read it twice, actually, both when I was probably 18 to 20.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, maybe 23, 24, however old I was when I just did an internship for you. Because I remember reading it that summer. And both times I found it, I enjoyed it. It had a good impression on me. Not so much as much the second time.
Yeah.
And then I kind of look back on it now and I'm just like, okay, there some okay ideas.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
nothing
the
that,
writing's
like,
not terrible.
yeah.
It's just maybe a little overrated, I guess.
Yeah, it is kind of a lot of platitude, so to speak.
Yeah.
Plus, I've heard Coelho's not that great of a guy, so.
Same. But yeah, shamefully, I actually thought about reading some Lispector yesterday just to get it in.
Dude.
But then I was like, I'm almost done Human Acts,
Yeah.
and I'm reading Infinite Jest and Lonesome Dove. Like, it just wasn't on the cards.
You only have Hour of the Star, right?
Yeah, it's very short, which is
Yeah.
why I thought about doing it.
Yeah, you could read that one in a day.
Okay. Chile.
I have read some from Chile. So I've read some Bolaño.
Mm-hmm.
I did not bring any of those with me today.
What have you read from him?
By Night in Chile and Antwerp.
Okay. Not familiar with either of those.
Antwerp, I did not understand at all.
Okay.
I read it kind of during my beginning of the year when I was not in really reading shape, so to speak.
Yeah.
Even if I had been, I think a lot of it would have been lost on me.
If you want to know what Andy is referring to, you'll have to have been a longtime listener to know. It's now the hidden episode.
Yeah. But I've talked to a couple people that have said you kind of have to read it after you've read like a lot of Bolaño.
Gotcha.
I enjoyed By Night in Chile. I think I kind of went in with the wrong approach.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not a very long book, and I was just like, I'll just read a quick short book, and I don't necessarily think I blasted through it and just kind of skimmed and ignored stuff, but probably did not read it as closely as I could have.
Yeah.
Or really taken my time and appreciated it. But I would still really like to read The Savage Detectives, which you have a copy of right there, and then 2666 and more of his other work to get an idea.
Is that how the title of that book is pronounced, 2666?
That's how I've heard most people
I always
pronounce it.
thought it was just 2666.
I've heard like people, 2,660. I've
Gotcha.
heard every kind of
Gotcha.
variation, but
Any Bolaño experts listening, chime in, let us know.
2666 seems to be the most.
And that's probably the easiest way to say it.
And then also from Chile, I have read The Obscene Bird of Night.
Oh, yeah, I
by
have a copy
Jose
of this.
Donoso. This was also translated by Megan McDowell.
Oh, cool.
Actually, no, I'm sorry. She helped with the edit.
Let me see.
But it was translated by Hardy St. Martin and Leonard Mattes. Mattes.
So I have a copy of this as well. It was sent to me as an ARC, and I also was in a bad reading place in the beginning of the year because I wasn't sleeping.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stay awake.
I read about 2/3 of this and then was really enjoying it. And then my life got flipped upside down. And I ended up finishing it, but I definitely, feel like I missed out on
Yeah,
a
it's
lot of
right in the mind, right in the right mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think what I remember saying to some people, I was reading it and kind of talking about my experience with it. It's kind of, to me, it came off as like a dark and twisted Garcia Marquez.
That's cool.
And
Nothing wrong with that.
and I was really enjoying it. So
Yeah.
I would like to reread it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, when I said that I'm woefully underread in Latin America, I was not exaggerating. I've read nothing from Chile. Would love to read some Bolaño. My other pick for that would be House of Spirits by Isabella Allende. So that's what I got for Chile. Moving on alphabetically, Colombia.
Yes.
I actually forgot to grab the only book I've read from Colombia off of my shelf, which is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. If you're going to read one from Colombia, that's probably the one you should read.
Probably that. Yeah, I've read that. I've read Love in the Time of Cholera, also by Marquez. I read a book, Tono the Infallible by Evelio Rosario, which was good. I enjoyed it. Nothing crazy, nothing super special about it. And then also from Colombia, a book I've talked about a number of times, The Adventures and Misadventures of Macrol by Alvaro Mutis, translated, at least in that edition, by Edith Grossman. 7 novellas make up the whole collection, and they're just awesome little kind of almost like existential, I don't know if I would say like adventure novels, but
and it's by NYRB.
Yeah, kind of close to that. There were parts of it that kind of made me feel like I was reading, longer form Borges.
Cool.
Kind of had that same sort of like, I don't know if mystical is the right word, but kind of that, not fantasy, but you know what I mean? Kind of just like,
Surrealism.
yeah, a little bit. So,
Cool.
But these are great. I mean, obviously, I think I would agree with what you said. If you're going to read one book from Colombia, read 100 Years of Solitude. If you're going to read 2 books from Colombia, read 100 Years of Solitude and The Adventures and Misadventures of Macrol.
All right, there you go. Heard it here first. NYRB, please email me back, please. Tangential, but that's what we do here. Book related. Our friend Jack's Paperbacks, asked me if I had ever received any books from Dalkey, like ARCs or compensated books. I said no, but I haven't asked. And he had said, I reached out and nobody got back to me. And so we were kind of talking about that because obviously we discussed that last week about NYRB not, or maybe the week before, not getting back to me when I had made some content that performed very well about one of their books. So, it's interesting. Like one of the things that Jack and I talked about was that I get it. These companies are small, sometimes understaffed. The margins are razor thin. So, it's tough, but, any like larger publisher, I've always had like super, super fast response. And I can't help but think it's like, you guys might sell more books and be a bigger company if you were a little bit better at like communicating with the people that are trying to promote the stuff you're printing. But just a really quick shout out to Henry Holt Co. They're a publisher that's sent me a bunch of stuff, super responsive, basic. I mean, I got a book. I want to do. I'm putting together this collection of content around the Vietnam War, and one of their books is part of the American Empire Project, which is a Kill Anything That Moves by Nick Terse, and that is a book that's been out for a while. It's not like a new release. And I was like, hey, can you guys send me this? And maybe like some other books from this collection. I think there's like 20 books. And they're like, yeah, sure. And it's just like, damn, all right, cool. Got back to me right away. So very appreciative of that. Costa Rica.
I've not read anything from Costa Rica.
Nor have I. Let's see what Tony's list says about this. Ooh, not much. I got nothing for Costa Rica. Okay, if you have any recommendations for books from Costa Rica, please let us know, because that's a big empty goose egg for me. And Cuba.
I have not read anything from Cuba. I have 2 books from Cuba that I would like to read. One of them is with me, and I'm Googling the second one right now.
I have one book from a Cuban author, Leonardo Padura, and the book is, I want to say, called Heretics. I've heard it's quite good, but then after I acquired it, I found out it's part of a series, and I haven't gotten around to determining whether or not I need to read the other books in the series or not. Gotcha. I don't think that you do to get it and appreciate it, but that is obviously something that you want to check on before you jump into a book that's, I think it's like 7th in this universe that he's built, you know.
So the one I have from Deep Vellum is Freeway, LA movie by Jorge Enrique Lage, Lage. I don't know.
We don't do so well with the Latin American names on this show.
No, and it's translated by Lourdes Molina. It is a cyberpunk novel set in the mid-21st century Cuba, crossing the absurdity of American pop culture with deep fragmented unease of Cuban-U.S. relations.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah,
actually.
And it's pretty short too. So, and then the other one I have that's with me, this is from Dalkey Archive. It is Paradiso by Jose Lazama Lima, translated by Gregory Robasso, which is about I believe he's a poet. It's follows a young man whose father just died, and he's kind of, searching for both his kind of these thoughts and memories of his dead father, and just kind of a coming of age story. And but I've heard this novel is actually very difficult.
Oh, okay.
Very difficult.
Not surprising, considering it's from Dalkey.
Yeah. Seth, my friend Seth at Waste Mailing List, I believe he said, compared the difficulty to that of The Tunnel.
Oh, okay.
So.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we gotta pick up the pace. We're only on C here. Actually D now. Dominican Republic.
Negative.
Yep, same. So any of these that we haven't read anything from, please, if you have any recommendations, let me know. Ecuador?
No.
Same. El Salvador?
Nope.
Same. Guatemala?
Nope.
I feel like I have, but I can't think of what it is. As much as like I've talked about being anti book counting and, just read, don't get caught up in like gamifying it. I do kind of regret not doing a better job of tracking my reading prior to 2023, really.
Yeah.
Had I known that I would become this hotshot book influencer, it would have served me well to have tracked my reading. Books Are Sick did a video about like the first 5 books he read or something like that, because he's only recently become a reader, and so it's all in there.
Right.
And I went back and looked, and like you could see my failed attempts of like, oh, I should use Goodreads. There's like an entry from like 2016, and then there's like nothing till like 2019, and then there's one book in 2019. Like it's a mess. So I feel like I have read a Guatemalan author. I can't think for the life of me what it is. Haiti?
Negative.
Honduras?
No.
All right. Mexico.
So
give us a little relief here.
Yeah, I've got 2 here. I have read some Fuentes. I'd like to read some Fuentes. I have your copy of Terra Nostra over here, which is pretty big. Big boy. This particular edition is from the Dalkey Archive. It's the edition I have. I just didn't bring it with me. I've heard it's a beefy one. I've heard it's pretty bonkers. Terra Nostra is concerned with nothing less than the history of Spain and of South America, with the Indian gods and with Christianity, with the birth, the passion, and the death of civilizations.
I'm into it.
So, and then I have these 2 little shorties that I have talked about a number of times. Paradise by Fernanda Melchor and The Hole by Jose Revolutes. And I've also talked about Hurricane Season by Melchor.
Someone in the Patreon was just saying that that might be the best book they've read all year. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, yeah.
Camera.
Yeah, it's an absolutely great novel. All 3 of... So these 2 and the other Melchor, all 3 of them are pretty dark. So...
Well, sticking with dark books from Mexico, Fury by Cleo Mendoza. That's one I read this year. This is from 7 Stories Press and translated by Christina McSweeney. This is, I talked about this book before in a previous episode, but violent, disgusting, foul language, lots of graphic, disgusting sexual stuff, but all for good reason.
You had me at disgusting.
Yeah, it's not just like gratuitous for the sake of it. It's it's about a lot of the cultural and political strife and violence that Mexico's experienced. It kind of blends some, like, I guess, historical fiction with like folklore, and just a really interesting book. Very similar to Fever Dream in that you're never like 100% sure what exactly is happening, what's real, what's imagined by the characters, but really easy book to pick up and put down because all of the chapters are
I remember you saying that. They're very short. Yeah.
So she's great. I would definitely read more by her. I don't think there's anything else in translation in English to English from her, but I would recommend it. Obviously, I own some Fuentes, so want to get to that, but just haven't yet. Moving down the alphabet, Nicaragua.
Negative. I can tell you if it speeds things up, I'm all out. I've covered every country that I've read.
Okay, so you haven't read anything from Peru or Venezuela?
No, sir.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a little surprising. So from Peru, just one, which again was also this year, Death in the Andes by Mario Vargas Llosa. I mean, the reason why I've read these 2 books this year is because at the beginning of the year, I was like, damn, I haven't read anything from South America, other than like 100 Years of Solitude. So I go through phases where I try to check off a few countries off my Read the World project, and then I'll get distracted and fall down some other type of rabbit hole. And I'm not necessarily going in any particular order either for countries, so it's kind of just like whatever. And it's funny because if you look at my total map of the world, there's like countries on there that you would expect somebody who's well read to have read something from, and then there's countries on there that I have read from that probably most people haven't, like Estonia, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah,
I was looking when I was kind of, making my list of countries and authors that I've read. I was expecting it to be a little bit greater.
Yeah.
But then I realized like there are a handful of other books that I've read from, translated from Spanish or Latin languages, but their authors are from Spain.
Sure.
So
yeah,
that kind of shortened the list. And then there were some others that I, from countries that we've already talked about that I read, but they were just okay, or I didn't really enjoy them and didn't really feel the need to bring them up.
Yeah. I mean, I know both of us want to read. Well, you haven't read any Yossi yet, but I know both of us want to read more from him.
Yep.
War at the End of the World.
Yes.
Or War of the End of the World, I believe it is.
Yeah.
You've read Conversation in the Cathedral, haven't you?
Yes.
So you didn't complete it?
Correct.
Gotcha. I don't really know of too many any other like notable Peruvian authors. So I don't have an extensive list beyond him as far as things I want to read from Peru. And then the only other country I've read from in the Latin American countries is Venezuela. And I read It Would Be Night in Caracas by, I'm such an idiot for not writing this down. Let me just Google her name very quickly. I did not like it. Karina Sainz Borjo. And I felt like it started very strongly. There were a lot of plot holes, and the book ended abruptly with no resolution whatsoever, which is not something that I need a book to do, but it felt like this one definitely should have.
Yeah.
So it was about basically, I think, kind of like the most violent period in modern Venezuelan history. And I'm not super familiar with Venezuelan politics, so I apologize in advance if I get this wrong. But basically, there was like a military takeover of the government, which is never a great thing. And, these soldiers are coming in and kind of like confiscating people's property. And this woman gets more or less like pushed out of her apartment. And then she ends up like breaking into somebody else's home and like being able to live there and kind of assuming that person's identity to try to get out of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And then here'll be a spoiler, so just like skip ahead like 2 minutes if you don't want to hear this. But the book ends when she like gets out of the country. She's been having correspondence with the family of this woman whose identity she's assumed, and she gets to this country, and in order to like not get, I think she goes to Spain, and in order to not like get deported, she's gonna like need their assistance. And the book ends with her like knocking on their door, like just before the moment they find out that their actual daughter is dead and this person's impersonating them. It's like, for a book that's only like 200 pages and like not much else happened, like maybe that's like where the story starts to get very interesting, So I didn't care for it. It was pretty highly acclaimed, which is why I picked it up. But so I feel the same way about Venezuela as I do Brazil, which is like, okay, I've technically read books from these countries, but I didn't love them, so I want to do another one, to satisfy my project. So, any other thoughts about Latin American literature? Do you notice any trends or typical themes or stylistic elements that are similar between these different countries and authors?
I'm not sure how accurately I could describe it, if I can like verbalize it very well, but I do tend to notice like stylistic similarities, like, not, I don't say that they're all the same, but books from Latin American countries and I think really anything that's like, my experience at least, translated from Spanish or a Spanish-like language, like Catalan.
Mm-hmm.
They all kind of do have a similar flair, so to speak. Can usually tell, like, okay, like this book was written in Spanish. Like there's just kind of this like air about them.
Yeah.
That I think you probably notice across any sort of art form, or even just like talking to someone that has a Latin American background or descent, like that. Those cultures just have their own like unique personality to them, and I feel like that bleeds through very well in the writing,
mm-hmm. and
it's very noticeable.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't think I can really verbalize it. Maybe if I had an earlier night, I'd be able to talk about it better. But
yeah.
But yeah, I have really enjoyed most of what I've read from Latin America. So, and I do have a lot more books that I would like to read. So,
yeah, I mean, I haven't read enough to really say like I've seen a ton of thematic or stylistic commonalities between the works, but what I will say is that on the Life on Books website, there's a tab for the Read the World project. It needs a ton of work, but you can go check it out now. And basically the idea is like you will click on a country and you'll get four book recommendations. As I already mentioned, nonfiction, fiction, a classic, and a book about the country. And the caveat with the book about the country is it doesn't have to be written by someone from the country. But the reason why I included that is because you might just be curious about the country's history. And unfortunately, when I was researching for this project, a lot of the books you'll find returned on a Google search are books about the country, not necessarily from the actual, like from an author from the country, which makes sense because it's, I'm in America. I'm an American using an American product, searching for books in English. So there's going to be way more written about rather than from in that context. I mean, there's probably plenty from in the native language, but of course I'm a dumb American, so I need it to be written in English or translated to English. The really sad thing is that I was trying to write a little bit of a blurb about the history of books and literature from each country. And I kind of abandoned that because it just was all the same in the sense that it was like, well, we don't really know too much about the really old, like folklore or very, very, very old literature from this country because when settlers from Europe got here, they basically didn't allow that. And then, somewhere between the 1800s and 1900s, when this country regained its sovereignty, like most of the writing is about their independence and the corruption of the country that colonized them. So that was like kind of unfortunate. I mean, obviously that's painting with a very broad brush, and there's probably lots of very interesting literature in those periods from various people talking about various topics. But that was like a really, really common kind of plot line on this, when I was doing research. It's just like, okay, so most literature is just like some asshole came and colonized my place, and now we finally got him out of here.
Yep.
Yep. Kind of a bummer, to put it lightly. Anything else you want to add about Latin American lit?
No, nothing that I can think of.
All right. Well, again,
read the authors we've talked about. Read Lispector.
Yeah. As always, read Lispector.
If nothing else works, read Clarice.
Yeah. And if you have any recommendations for any of the gaping holes in our list here, let us know. And for those who are on Patreon, stick around for the bonus discussion where we're going to talk about why them damn kids can't read no books no more. All right. We'll see you next time.